All right. Welcome to everyone listening on AMP. We appreciate you listening there. If you want to follow me on AMP to never miss one of these segments, follow me at Chris Mannix. To those listening on YouTube, welcome as well. We are recording this on the eve of the NBA Finals, where my Denver Nuggets are going to take on the Miami Heat Game 1 at home at Ball Arena. And that voice you heard snickering at that comment was Mark Medina, longtime NBA writer. NBA.com, Sportsnot, all over the place. You see him on TV and radio as well. Mark, why do you think that's funny? I have, if there's one takeaway from this week, it's that I am a lifelong supporter of the Denver Nuggets. I have been from day one. I don't know what else you can conclude at this point.
Without a doubt. I mean, Chris, I asked this with all seriousness and also facetiousness. Which storyline are you going to lean into more of this NBA Finals? The Denver disrespect or the Heat culture?
Ooh, tough. Denver's actually playing the disrespect card, though. Like, the Heat don't play the Heat culture card. Like, they talk about the culture, but it's like when I was in Boston over the last few days, when you see quotes from Heat players about the culture there and why they're so successful, it's because people ask them about it. Like, Denver, especially Michael Malone, kind of brings this stuff up a lot. Like, you know, how the disrespect for Jokic, for the team, all that stuff. The Heat, everybody's kind of leans into it with them and asks them about all the reasons that make them successful. But look, it is an interesting series on paper. You do have the best player in the game right now in Nikola Jokic going up against the team that is going to throw a lot of interesting defenses at him during this series. So let's unpack a few of the storylines here as we look ahead to game 1 on Thursday. How the Heat defend Jokic, Mark, is probably the most significant individual matchup of this series. We're going to get to Jimmy Butler in a second and how Denver elects to defend him. But Jokic has just been white hot this postseason. 8 triple-doubles already. That's a record for a single postseason. Beats out Wilt Chamberlain already for that mark. Miami, Bam Adebayo is a great defender. But if you look at some of the numbers for Jokic versus Bam Adebayo, they lean pretty hard towards Nikola Jokic. And Jokic has proven during the playoffs, there's really no defending him one-on-one. I mean, Anthony Davis is an all-world defender, and Jokic and the Nuggets went through the Lakers in 4 games. Obviously, Bam Adebayo is going to get the first crack at Jokic, but I think this is going to be a question of how physical can Miami be with Nikola Jokic? Like, how physical will the referees let him be? How physical will Miami's non-Bam Adebayo players be? And by that, I mean, you have guys chipping into him, whether it's Max Strus, Caleb Martin, you name it. Do you have just guys bumping him and grinding him and trying to keep him off his spots? I just wondered right now how they defend Jokic, because if they find ways to make him less efficient, they give themselves at least a puncher's chance to win this series.
Yeah, Chris, it's really a damned if you do, damned if you don't. No doubt, Bam Adebayo, he's going to be the primary guy. He can defend all 5 positions, but defending Nikola Jokic is easier said than done. And using the Lakers as a reference point here, they wanted to put, obviously, Anthony Davis on him. He's a great defensive player. He held his own. But they're always in this catch-22 of, no doubt you want to throw different bodies at him, but to what extent do you double and help on him? Because as we saw what happened throughout that series is when they did that, he just kicked it out to outside shooters, and they made those shots. And one of the, I think, lessons that the Nuggets took from that first-round series loss against the Golden State Warriors, beyond the fact that, hey, Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. are out, is that Calvin Booth and the rest of the front office looked at, okay, what else can we do to add more depth? That really explained why they got guys like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Bruce Brown. So the fact that they have really good, dependable guys that can knock down outside shots, and you have a Jamal Murray who's playing like he was in the bubble, it makes it a very difficult challenge in and of itself. It's difficult enough to figure out, okay, how do you defend Jokic? Because you can't. He can score in the post. He can shoot those ridiculous fall-away shots at the end of the shot clock. He's the best passing big man in the NBA. But to add that into the team dynamic really makes that problem multiply by a few times.
Yeah, 2 things I think Miami's going to try with Jokic. One is to bump and grind him. The second he kind of gets, a little bit past that half-court line, he's not going to have kind of the free reign he's had in the past. Just make the catch beyond the three, survey the field, and do whatever he wants. I think they're going to play uptight on him, whether it's Bam Adebayo, Kevin Love, whoever else Miami might pull off their bench to play on him. I also think they're going to mix up their coverages. I don't think you'll just see single coverage with Bam Adebayo. You'll probably see double teams come at different times, and I'm sure you'll see a lot of that zone because Miami had a lot of success with that zone against Boston. Denver's a different type of team, but look, Boston had a lot of great players, and Miami neutralized a lot of them with that zone defense. I think you'll see a lot of that in this series as well. And how Jokic deals with it, I think will be a big thing to watch in the first couple of games of these finals. From Miami's side, it strikes me like the Heat almost have to play a perfect series. Like the Heat, you're going to have them shoot at the same level from 3-point range that they did against Boston. That means Caleb Martin is going to have to be a 40+% 3-point shooter. Duncan Robinson is going to have to be a 40+% 3-point shooter. Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, these guys are going to have to be high 30s, low 40s from 3-point range because as great as Jimmy Butler is, and I want to talk about how the Nuggets plan to defend him, but he can't do it by himself against a team that's going to put up as many points as the Nuggets are likely to do. So from Miami's side, one of the things I'm looking for right off the jump is how well they shoot the three. They're outstanding in their wins against Boston shooting the three, including that game 7. Do you think they can do the same thing against this Denver team?
Well, I think philosophically they can do the same thing, but the ultimate question is, can it be at the same efficiency? And I don't think they can. I think a lot of it also had to do with the fact that, as you know, Chris, the Celtics defense was inconsistent at best. And Denver, look, going back to my original point about how they bolstered that lineup, you have KCP and Bruce Brown and even Aaron Gordon, who also plays inside. They're all capable of, playing really good perimeter defense. The Nuggets have also noted how much Jamal Murray has improved as a defender as well. And so I think that the Heat, they have the great team concept. They have a lot of great passing. They have a lot of great floor spacing. These guys fundamentally are geared to be ready to shoot whenever they get the ball, whether it's a Tyler Hero, a Caleb Martin, you go down the line with Duncan Robinson. I mean, that's their job description, that if they get the ball, you're supposed to shoot it. But at that astronomical rate that they showed against Boston, I can't quite see them pulling it off. And the point that you made about Jimmy Butler, look, he's a gamer. Even if he's inefficient, he always still has a way of finding ways to have an imprint on the game through his hustle plays, his playmaking, his aggressiveness. Even if he's not shooting a great percentage, the fact that you're making shots is still great. But I just wonder, in the ongoing battle of war of attrition during the NBA Finals, does it ultimately catch up to Miami?
You mentioned a name there, Tyler Hero, who has been out since game 1 of that Milwaukee series. I've read some reporting that says Tyler Hero's targeting a game 3 return to the Heat lineup. It sounds kind of crazy, but if you're Eric Spoelstra in Miami, do you play Tyler Hero in this series? I mean, he has been out since, what is it, mid to late April. That's a long time. Over a month, he hasn't played basketball. And look, he's been shooting, so there's value in that, but he's never been a great defensive player anyway. So ask him to come in and play at the speed and the tenacity and the ferocity that a final series is played at. I don't know that that's something I'd roll the dice on. I mean, I'd almost rather, tap Haywood Highsmith for limited minutes if I need him in a situation like that than go to Tyler Hero. I mean, if you'd asked us a month ago, of course, if he'd missed, a week, 10 days, that's one thing. But being out for a month and dropping midway into a final series, that feels like that would be a big risk for Miami to take, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's a very fair question to ask, Chris. I think that if he is healthy, there's going to be value in playing him, but it could be just limited minutes, if nothing else, just to eat some minutes for everyone else as, the war of attrition plays out during the NBA Finals. But I think you hit on a great note here with how long Tyler Hero has been out, and to plug him not only into an NBA Finals setting, but knowing, the altitude challenges that come up when you play your first game in Denver, how much more pronounced that's going to be. So I think
maybe that's why, Mark. Maybe that's why they're targeting game 3 in Miami, if that's true.
So he can
they don't want to drop him into Denver. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. But I think that if he is healthy enough to play, they don't have to commit to long-term minutes by any stretch. Maybe give him a few minutes just to see how he is. But as soon as it's a net positive, just yank him. And I think the good thing that the Miami Heat have is they certainly have a lot of depth. They have reinforcements, experience to be able to absorb his absence. It's been kind of the MO throughout this season that they've always been dealing with something, whether it's an injury or, trying to overcome their own inconsistency or overcome a crunch time situation where they rely on Jimmy Butler or one of their undrafted players. So it's certainly not something that that Miami is going to feel overwhelmed with. They have that emotional maturity, but from an execution standpoint, when you're stacking up all those things of, okay, what's going to not only make the difference in a possible 7-game series against the Nuggets, but where conditioning is such an important element in the NBA Finals, I think it's a very fair question. Are you better off just saying him? But I think if he is healthy, play him for a few minutes and then just see how that plays out, and don't make any commitments, good or bad, until you really know for sure how he'll look on the court.
The other X factor for Miami, I think, is Kyle Lowry and how he plays in this series. You look at some of the games he had against Boston. Game 1, he had 15 points, shot 50% from the floor. Game 7, I think he only had 7 or 8 points, but he still shot, 50% from the floor, 50% from 3-point range, had 7 or 8 rebounds, 5 or 6 assists. Like, he looked closer to the playoff version of Kyle Lowry that we've seen in years past than the guy we saw during this regular season who looked like he had nothing left, who was, out of the starting lineup, for Gabe Vincent. I wonder which version of Kyle Lowry they'll get in a series like this, because they need the good version. They need the one we saw in the last round, not one that was averaging an outstanding number of points. I think he only averaged like 7 points per game in that series, but in their wins, he was efficient. He was a floor general. He drew charges. He made plays. He's going to have a tough matchup when he comes in this series because Jamal Murray is going to play a lot of minutes. How much can Miami count on Kyle Lowry at this point?
I think they can count on him, from an execution standpoint. But I think the real difficult puzzle that Eric Spoelstra has to figure out is when is the right time to use him. It's almost kind of a break glass in case of emergency type of thing, because you don't want to.
I think he's got to be way more than that. Honestly, Mark, I think he's got to be way more than that. I mean, Vince is the guy you're going to lean on, but Vincent has never been, at least not played on this stage before. Kyle has, and the guy I saw last round looked like someone with a lot left in the tank. I don't think you play him, 15, 20 minutes. I think his number's got to be close to 25, 30 in this series.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say here, Chris, is that the break glass of emergency is making sure that he can get through the entire series, right, without diminishing returns. And so I think with that, using him to start the series would be really good, and then seeing if that buys the Heat some comfort level, and then reducing his workload, and then pulling the lever back up as the series presumably gets more competitive so that he is available and needed for those game 6, game 7 situations. But it's not an easy answer, because in the NBA Finals, like, this is what it's all about. You're not load managing. You're not trying to play the end game, because this is the end game. But in case of where Kyle Lowry is at his career, if you're going to do a thing where you're playing him his normal rotation minutes that he had in the prime of his career, all of a sudden, I think that he would be grossly ineffective the following game. So it is that weird middle gray area. But I am with you. Like, there is the danger of you then wait too long. So I think right off the bat at the beginning of the series, see if that gives them some headway, and then hopefully you can use a Mariano Rivera style later on in the series.
Yeah, I think if Kyle Lowry is effective, look, if Miami finds a way to win this series, it's going to be in part because Kyle Lowry is effective. I'm sure of that. I'm sure he's going to have a pretty big series for them to come away with a win. From Denver's side, how they defend Jimmy Butler, I think it's going to be one of their best strengths. Like, I think Aaron Gordon's going to get a lot of minutes on Jimmy Butler. Aaron Gordon has a lot of the tools that you need to defend Jimmy Butler. You need length, which we saw bothered Butler somewhat in the last round when the Celtics switched Rob Williams onto him. You need some strength, you need some foot speed. These are all things that Aaron Gordon, has. I mean, he is a pretty strong defender at that wing position. If Denver can get away with defending Jimmy Butler one-on-one and living with him having 20, 25 points, a lot of which are coming off contested twos. A lot of nights him shooting a low percentage. They're going to win these games going away, because where Boston got in trouble, especially early, was they sent double teams, and Miami is so sharp execution wise that they got to their spots. Miami played driving kick and they knocked down 3-pointers. If Denver can stay at home on these 3-point shooters, and if Gordon can be a deterrent to Jimmy Butler in one-on-one situations, this could be a very short series, Mark. That I believe. I think that's a matchup that, I'm not going to say it favors Denver, because I think Jimmy's going to have some big moments and big nights. But if they can limit it to him and him shooting inefficiently, that's going to bode really well for him.
Yeah, Chris, I think that you hit on a really good point that the Nuggets have perspective on the danger of double teaming. I mean, the Lakers had I think an early reminder in game one and the fallacy of doing that, because Nikola Jokic just kicked out to open shooters. And I think the same thing the Miami Heat would do with Jimmy Butler, because they have the personnel to do that. So I think the key is, knowing that Jimmy Butler is going to still have productive games, he's still going to be competed. It's about throwing multiple bodies, maybe starting Aaron Gordon and vice versa in different parts of the series, but using any combination of Aaron Gordon, Bruce Brown, KCP, just to have different looks. Also hoping that he wears out throughout the game without the luxury of finding an open shooter to knock down outside shot is the ultimate solution. Because the minute that you start thinking, okay, let's try to have help right away, or, get into his own defense or call things out like that, you're just going to make it actually easier for Miami, because it will reduce wear and tear on Jimmy Butler and allow more floor balance and spacing and contributions all across the board.
Yeah, and you mentioned the other defenders, KCP, Bruce Brown, that Denver has on the roster. I mean, one of the ways that Calvin Booth has been able to kind of put his imprint on the team has been bringing in these types of defenders. Bruce Brown has had a fantastic season, going to get paid this offseason. KCP, I think a lot of people looked at that deal and wondered, was it about money? Was it about, whatever? But he's been outstanding for them this year. I know that Denver last offseason, they kicked the tires on Gary Payton II. That was someone they talked about internally bringing in. Like, there was a conscious decision made to bring in versatile defensive players just for these types of situations in the playoffs, when you've got to match up with top flight guards and top flight wings. And Denver is pretty well equipped, I think, to deal with whatever Miami has on the perimeter. And look, I was skeptical that Caleb Martin could continue what he's been doing in game 7 against Boston. He proved me wrong. He was great. He was outstanding. Can he do it in a final series? I don't know, especially since I think Denver's got guys that can match up pretty well with him in the starting lineup and off the bench. All right, so let's boil it down here. Who you got in this series? And tell me, Mark Medina, who is this finals MVP?
Oh, wow. Well, it's not going to be a sweep. It's going to be, I think the Nuggets will win it in 6 games, but there is a formula for Miami to be able to win. They're that good. They've shown that they can overcome the odds this postseason, but I think it's going to be the Nuggets winning the championship. I think it's Nikola Jokic getting his MVP. And don't look now, but your amazing video moments just going to continue to go viral every time the Nuggets collect a win. But look, I gotta go on a soapbox here, because you can listen to my radio appearances recently. I was on Fox Sports a bunch of times with Doug Gottlieb, and we talked about this nonsense of a story and stood up for you. That one, your comments were grossly taken out of context. You're talking about just major developments with major stories involving major franchises with the Lakers, the Warriors, the Clippers, the Suns, when it came to seismic trades, seismic possible career decisions, a la LeBron James. And so you're 100% correct in what you said. And we empathize, at least to a small degree, of the heat that you're facing through. And I do want to add this nugget here with a question to you, Chris, because in lieu of, all this commentary of, has the media given enough attention to the Denver Nuggets, especially the national media? I was covering game 4, Lakers Nuggets. Nuggets advanced to the NBA Finals, end of the Lakers season. I wound up doing 2 pieces that night. One on Nikola Jokic's season and how internally the Nuggets felt like he even reached a higher level, and what that meant with helping him close out the series, get to the NBA Finals for the first time in franchise history. And I also did a story on LeBron James hinting about his retirement and people around him being skeptical about it. Guess which story did a lot better as far as page views goes?
I mean, it goes without saying that LeBron, arguably the greatest player in NBA history, hinting at retirement is the story that garners more national attention. I empathize with the Nuggets in the sense that after they sweep the Los Angeles Lakers, the story was LeBron, because LeBron on his own brought up the idea of not playing next season. I thought that was a deliberate move on his part, because I think everything LeBron does is deliberate. I never mind fans jumping up and down and saying we deserve more attention. I appreciate you saying it was taken out of context, because it was. My point was not the Nuggets are boring or don't have great stories within their team. It was that when you're looking at how the league is covered in the second half of the season, when the Lakers shake up their roster before the trade deadline, have Anthony Davis coming off a foot injury, have LeBron going out with the foot injury, when the greatest, the most significant trade, midseason trade in NBA history happens, you're going to cover how that is going in Phoenix, backwards and forwards. The Warriors, how dysfunctional they were on the road compared to at home. Is their dynasty over? That's a major storyline in the NBA. Meanwhile, the Nuggets are just chugging along. Like, they were just chugging along as the best team in the Western Conference since like Christmas. And that's just not as interesting as, you know, the ebbs and flows of some of these other teams out there. I'm glad the Nuggets are getting their due right now. They deserve it. Jokic is an all-time great. And if I'm Jokic, he won't do this, but I'd be like looking for the people that said Joel Embiid was better than him because he had a higher playoff ceiling than him. I heard that a lot for sure, you know, over the last couple of months. Jamal Murray, if I'm him, you know, like, here's my story, man. Like, I haven't played in 2 years, basically, or a year plus after going out with an ACL injury. Like, here's my story. Michael Porter Jr., you know, an incredible story, you know, this year, coming back from multiple back surgeries, personal tragedy in his life. But I mean, if you're asking, you know, will this won't change a damn thing going into next season. If the teams that we just talked about are going through the kind of ebbs and flows that we talked about, we're going to be writing about them and we're going to be talking about them. And that's just kind of the way it goes. The Nuggets can get the last laugh on everybody because they can win a championship and, you know, be celebrating outside ball arena, big parade, and they can wear t-shirts saying no respect if they want. But it's just kind of going to be the way it goes in the media landscape. Now, before we finish my prediction, I'm going Nuggets in 6. I could even see Nuggets in 5. I'm not going to say Nuggets in 5 because before the last round I said Celtics in 5, and that just blew up in my face pretty quickly. But I just think they're the better team, more talented, and as much as Miami's going to throw at Nikola Jokic, I think he's going to figure it out. Like, I think he's too smart a player and too skilled a player. And Miami, how deep they had to dig to beat Boston. Like, coming back after 3 losses, including a gut-wrenching one in Game 6. You got Game 7. They all credit to them for winning that on Boston's home floor, but I just wonder how much is left, you know, that these guys have. The Nuggets have been chilling for like a week and a half. I was going to say a month. It felt like a month. I just don't think Miami, with the altitude issues, with, you know, the fatigue issues, I don't think they're going to be able to hang with them. When I was talking to a coach about this week, his path for Miami to victory was pretty interesting. He's like, look, Miami's got to split in Denver, and Game 1's probably going to be their best chance to win. You've got a rested but perhaps rusty team in the Nuggets, been sitting around. Maybe they can come in as the sharper team and steal a win. Then you go home, and all you really got to think about there is split 2. Like, you want to get one of the two in Miami, because then you're sending Denver home. And yeah, they've got home court advantage. Game 5 would be in Denver, but the Nuggets have not faced that kind of adversity before. They haven't been in an elimination game yet in these playoffs. So maybe you start to give them something to think about. Maybe some doubt creeps into their mind. Whereas Miami, you know, you can't get more, you know, toughened up than what Miami was in that series against Boston, having to dig deep to win that Game 7. So I can sort of see that being Miami's lane, you know, splitting the first 4 games and then putting some doubt into Denver's mind. But this is a really good Nuggets team. And since the second round of the playoffs, they have been by far the best team in the NBA. So I just don't see them stumbling now. I don't. I think the Nuggets win this series. 6 is my official prediction. Not surprised if it's going to be 5. There you have it, Nuggets Nations. I'm on your side on this one. I picked the Lakers to beat you last round, largely because I picked the Lakers to go all the way to the finals 2 months ago. But I am with you here in Denver. We are one in solidarity Denver. I promise you that.
Compelling content here about the Nuggets. Reinforce real quick. I think, you mentioned about this. I mentioned about this. The fact that the Nuggets have had 0 injuries during this postseason, and
Yeah, it's big too.
Their training staff. I talked with Felipe Eichenberger. They've really emphasized just the importance of post game lift sessions, and that's been across the board, top to bottom. And while Miami, they're notorious for their own conditioning regimen, I think in this specific context of the team's durability, I think that is going to be a huge variable beyond what we already outlined with the talent level and the depth, et cetera.
Yeah, I agree with you. Mark Medina, check out his stuff on social media, all over TV, all over radio. Mark, I appreciate your time, man.
Appreciate you, Chris, and hope you can stay safe in Denver, my friend.
Just a reminder that you can catch me recording this podcast live on AMP. AMP is the new live radio app that lets you call in and chat with me in person while I'm recording. Get the app on Apple's App Store and make sure you follow me at Chris Mannix to get notified when I go live.